open our special called meeting, June 2023, June 23rd, 2023, at 5 p.m. Let's see. Mr. Darty, could you call the roll for us, please?
Yes, ma'am. Commissioner Street,
Here.
Commissioner Johnson. Here. Commissioner Hall,
Here.
Mayor Anderson,
Present.
Vice Mayor Butler.
We don't have any citizens' comments tonight.
None tonight.
Okay, thank you. Item 6, new business. A, Resolution 36-23, a resolution of the City of Fairview, Tennessee Board of Commissioners authorizing the mayor to execute a utility station site easement to Piedmont Natural Gas Company. And if anyone is with Piedmont Natural Gas, if you could just come to the mic, please. Mr. Darty, would you like to speak to that?
Yes, ma'am. This was on the previous agenda, and there were a few questions that the board wanted to ask representatives, and they're in kind of a time bind as far as wanting to go ahead and get started with the project, so we called this a special call meeting. Thank you.
Let's go ahead and make a motion, and then we'll go to discussion after that.
Move to approve, but I do have a question later.
Yeah, we'll discuss it after we have the motions.
Thanks.
Second. Any discussion from the board?
I noticed that y'all are putting shrubs and, decorating it up pretty good with a decorative fence and that type thing. Do you have any future plans for maintaining the shrubs, keeping them trimmed or anything of that nature?
Yes, sir. I'm Stephen Francesca. I'm Government Community Relations Manager for Piedmont Natural Gas. And Wanda's here joining me too, and she can speak and answer for us too. She's with the land agent. It's my understanding that $2,500 will be contributed to you all to put in at your preference what shrubbery you all would like with any of your contractors out here locally. And the reasoning behind that is that, if we do it, we have to go through all of our contractors and bidding and have to get it approved. And just to have what you all would like to go in, we make that donation to you all.
Okay.
Point of order. I think the question was, what are you going to do to maintain the shrubbery so it doesn't look like garbage in a year?
Right. I'll let, if that is on our land or if it's actually their part in our easement.
Could you, sorry, we just can't hear you. The people at home would like to hear you as well.
Okay. I'm Wanda Phillips. I'm actually with Percheron, and Duke Energy is our client. And the $2,500 is for the landscaping allowance, but it must be outside the 30 by 30 easement area where the actual USSE site is. So the city actually will be responsible for its maintenance. Now,
So it would be, it being outside of that would be if we grant you the area there is what you're saying.
yes, and that's primarily for whatever maintenance in the future for the reg station there may be.
All
That they
right,
know-
let me ask you this. Since you do this for a living, I would say that you probably know how much maintenance costs on a facility like this. Are you saying that you're wanting to give us $2,500 for perpetuity and thinking that $2,500 is going to take care of this for the next 50 years? Or are you talking about giving us $2,500 a year?
No, the 2,500 is for acquisition for the plants or trees or whatever you want to have planted.
Okay, and what about the maintenance? We're responsible for the maintenance, is that what you're saying?
And that's the way we usually do our reg station sites.
So y'all actually don't put any shrubbery around these things at all? They
No,
just,
sir.
in the city of Brentwood?
Well,
But because I've been to several places in Brentwood and Franklin, and they don't allow this. They're nice. They have a wood fence around them.
Well, I know that we have agreed to the fencing, and the proposal for that fencing was based off of the type that Fairview Baptist Church had asked for us to put around our reg station that we're currently building out there now. That was their preference. So we just went with that, thinking that that might be acceptable to you. But if you've got something else that you would prefer, we'll look at that.
Okay?
What we've been faced with, and like Commissioner Johnson said, I've driven around a lot more, but I've actually been a part of having to help cut back shrubs and stuff in subdivisions from different utility stations inside of subdivisions. And so therefore, the shrubs was actually growing over the area. And so main thing, and then we also, TVA redone the power line behind our Bowie Park, and they had promised to keep that maintained. And I've since found out that the city of Fairview is doing the bush hogging and everything of that. It looks great, once it's done, but then
Right.
we went on I went on down the road further where it wasn't being done. It was like in the county then. It was really growing up, and so I just want to protect the city in the future. So,
What I
and
have-
I'm not trying to, put this off on y'all
Right,
all of a
right.
sudden, but I want to see if there's any way that we can start justifying a means to the end, so to speak.
Right. What I have seen in a couple of others in Wilson County, we've just completed, is, a selection of small hedges, and then they have kind of formed around it with white gravel. So it's kind of, prevents from having to have much maintenance around it.
Yeah,
But,
that's-
there's all kinds of,
Yeah.
I guess, design ideas that you can
Yeah.
do with that.
Yeah, they can put the cloth down to keep the weeds from growing through it and help that. That's a good idea. And, but the main thing that I remember about a subdivision was where the shrubs was actually growing over it, like almost an umbrella over it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it just was, and until the family complained about it on both sides of it, they were trying to do their best to keep it cut around it and everything.
Well,
But,
if there is any growth that comes inside the 30 by 30 area of the easement, then, Piedmont would certainly have to have that trimmed,
Yeah.
just for access.
I noticed on Taylor Road and 100 up here that it had been cut in the last few days, I think. I don't know whether they cut it with a mower or whether they took a weed eater or what and cut in around that one up there at Taylor Road and 100.
A Piedmont station?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know who done that. Tom may know, but, I don't know who done that.
And, if I may, I can speak to a little bit more on the Nashville side of recent projects. Oak Hill, like Franklin Road area. We just had a recent major project over there, and it was a substantially larger station, and they chose to go with, it was the same scenario, essentially, where we paid them to do the landscape of their choice, and they used mainly evergreens. And, the maintenance is relatively nothing on that, but the inception of the planting, of course, and the watering was one's concern. But those are the only two main concerns that I've heard of late on any one that we have done. And again, it's just what the typical offering is. But again, just like Wanda said, I mean, if y'all would prefer a different fence or a different landscape option, we can pursue that.
I think the main thing here is the fact that you're paying us to put what we want in there. So whatever is put in there, if we do it, it's not even worth talking about right now as far as getting this taken care of. But the fact that this is property that the city owns, they are going to be using for purposes of the substation, but Fairview's not going to get anything after this lump sum. So we're paying taxes and all this stuff on this piece of property that we can't do anything with while y'all gain. And I think there needs to be something within the contract for Fairview to actually get a monetary or a yearly contribution, especially if we're going to have to maintain the outside of it.
Point noted, definitely, and I've actually got a question for you, Wanda. So we still pay property tax, correct, on our station and land.
Yes,
Yeah, so,
And the
so we still.
request for the service was by the developers here.
Right, yeah, and so I think the only other, not a counter at all, but where the landscaping is, it is outside of our easement, correct?
Correct.
And so that's actually y'all's property, we would be maintaining something on y'all's property that is outside of our easement. I don't necessarily think there's like a liability there, but that's kind of another issue that I can't necessarily speak on, the property management might be more effectively.
So $2,500 isn't even gonna
Yeah.
touch doing landscaping around this. I just priced out the front of my house.
Yeah.
And it was $8,000. Let me tell you, just as a visual, the size of this, because I've looked at your Exhibit A here, is the size of the beam going across behind the TV, all the way down the sides and back to here. That's how big that is. $2,500 is not gonna touch a fence, which I would like to see wood, or landscaping to go around this. It's right on Highway 96 and Northwest Highway, which is a very visual, you know, the visibility there of people driving by. You know, wood fence is my preference because of, you know, people are gonna be seeing this every day. Not to mention, I'm not sure exactly where, is Whiskey Fire gonna stay at the same place it's at? Do we know?
I'm not sure. I think it's on the opposite corner though, right now.
Because they're located right here, and here is this, you know, station. So the landscaping and the, you know, like a nicer wood fence is gonna just, if this was back a house somewhere, that'd be one thing, but we're front and center right on our highway, where
We understand.
everybody passes
Yeah.
every day.
Would you be receptive to like a poly fence that's maybe brown color, like a taupe color poly? And the reason being, because we will be maintaining it. It's much easier. Probably won't have to replace it, but fencing, you know, even if it's cedar.
So you're talking about like the ones that are the no-maintenance fences
Right.
that are, look like a split rail, but they're made out of like a different
A
material.
poly type, yeah.
It'd be better than chain link.
Okay.
How tall would that be?
I believe the last one we did was it 8 feet or 6? Do you know?
8 feet, what project, maybe?
I'm talking about the one on Franklin Road. They're stationed next to the church there.
I can't remember.
Can you see through it?
I'm sorry.
Sir?
Can you see through it?
If you look really hard, it's.
I mean, but you're talking about just you'd have to be looking hard to see through
Oh,
it?
yeah, yeah. You wouldn't know that that's behind there if you were
Okay.
driving by.
And also, if we do nicer landscaping on the outside of it, it's gonna screen it as well.
How many customers do y'all think y'all are gonna gain by having this there? What is y'all's projection?
That's probably a question for North Carolina, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I think that's up to the city of Fairview as well, and what, from an economic development standpoint is, from an infrastructure project, if you look at it for what it provides, we're doing a similar one in Bellevue, but having to do a pipeline infrastructure as well. That's to maintain the existing growth, but also, maintain what they have existing, but also the future growth. So, you know, gas infrastructure is only, you know, for one company. There's not another company here. And our pipeline integrity is very important. So the example that I give them is like you're at peak winter, you know, everybody's using their heat. You know, you have to maintain the integrity of that pipeline and to be able to pull that gas in for it for all your residents. But then also if you have a manufacturing facility or anything else comes in future, that also has to be prepared. And to do it on the back end is much tougher. And, you know, I know priority, you want the heat for your residents. You know, the economic development side is, you know, the secondary part of it. But essentially, it's all dependent on you all, what y'all's future growth is for here. I mean, I can remember from 10 years ago, you know, coming out or with Leadership Middle Tennessee and hearing all the plans and what's down the pipeline potentially. So this is what that effort is for. It's not specifically for any one manufacturing facility or new subdivision. It's overall in general. If
So-
that answers your question.
So based on
Specific, yeah.
what Commissioner Street said, and I do agree with that aspect, these new customers that you bring on, you're not just gonna charge them for 1 year and then the rest of the time you don't charge them anymore, is that correct?
No, sir. New customers, Piedmont Natural Gas as a company charge a distribution fee, essentially a customer fee, and that's a standard every week, and the cost of gas is essentially passed on. So the only price fluctuations that you'll see is with the cost of gas. So if something happens in geopolitical world or anything else to that nature, they can fluctuate a little bit, but we are governed by the Tennessee Public Utility Commission as far as rates and fees and everything.
So in year 3, the customer's still gonna get a bill?
In our what?
In year 3, the customer that's using your service is still gonna get a bill, correct?
In our territory, yeah, you get a bill every month. Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So, based on what she was saying, you're wanting to pay us a one-time easement. I think it should be a yearly easement. You're wanting to use our property for years to come, correct?
Correct, yes, yes, sir. That infrastructure does not move, yeah, it's dead in there. Yes.
And Tom, how much did we pay for the property?
$366,000.
And you've valued it at $100,000 on the paperwork that was presented to us tonight.
For 948 feet.
I understand that, but if you used $100,000 to come up with $1,700, fair market value would be what we just gave for it. So,
Well, we took that and divided by the acreage, which I think is a little over five acres, to determine the acreage per acre. The 330-something was for 5-point-something acres, I'm not sure. Tracks, I think, maybe, or,
it was done before I was here, so I'm not exactly sure how many tracks it is.
that's how
I
we.
believe it's just 2 tracks. I did all the paperwork, and then it's on.
Both
the right-
sides of
it's
Northwest
both sides,
Highway?
yes.
So we own the side where
But
the house is
primarily-
as well?
But primarily, most of it's on the right.
No,
Is that incorrect?
we don't own the house and where the land is
No,
there.
no. We don't know where
We
the
own
house-
on the Whiskey Fire side of,
Where his complete business is?
I don't know exactly, yes, I don't know exactly the,
Okay,
you know, the
regardless,
boundary,
regardless of the fact, I would like to amend the motion that we receive the $1,760 yearly, the city received that, and the 8-foot fence with the new material that she was speaking of.
Polymaterial.
The poly material be used on that 8-foot fence. And I don't know what number to use for the landscaping. If you're saying 8,000 wouldn't,
That's just the
wouldn't-
front, that's just a little part of the front of my house, so I'm not sure. I mean, is there a way for, are we responsible for doing the landscaping? Is that what you were saying?
Yes, because
So,
Piedmont doesn't maintain.
and the
cities-
fence as well? Or
No,
are you
the
doing the
fence is
fence?
actually on the easement area.
Okay, so
So we
y'all
would-
are gonna be doing the fence?
Correct.
Okay, so, can we have the landscaping done and then, give a bill to Piedmont for the landscaping? I just don't, I'm not comfortable with the 2,500. That's not even gonna cover a few bushes.
Yeah, sure. And 2 things real quick, just before I forget, just to clarify. So, and again, this is, Wanda, please correct me if I'm not saying this right. So the actual estimate for the easement and what they offer is just for that easement tract of land. So if it's only a third of that full price, it's a third of the total property value.
That
And
makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and that's how they do that. Now, the annual percentage of it, I can't recall that we have any agreement that pays it on an
No,
annual basis.
no.
It's just the proper value of that land at that time. And for the landscaping, I think one reason why we probably don't just do it afterwards, because we don't have control of, the bidding process, if y'all are getting competitive bids, or if it's just y'all just go with one fine bid and that's it, and that's another reason why we leave it up to you all. Now, we can probably get together and figure out an estimate and talk to a couple landscape professionals, like, what's it gonna be ballpark? and readjust that, but if it's more than 2,500 of what's going to be necessary to make it look minimum average, absolutely. I mean, I think we don't want to sour any kind of deal that where the landscaping wouldn't be up to par or wouldn't be with any other regulator station that we own.
So on the contract here, who actually got together and drew all this up? The contract?
Our legal team in North Carolina is their original office
Okay,
for
so
Duke Energy.
can y'all, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Can y'all explain the public disclosures saying that it's not going to be part of any public records? It's,
Well, no, this easement will be recorded.
She doesn't mean the easement, she means the confidential agreement with the City of Fairview entitled Letter Agreement between Piedmont Natural Gas Company and City of Fairview. It's
Oh,
marked
yes.
confidential at the
Yes,
top.
no, that won't be recorded.
okay, because I feel that
As far as I know, do you know?
the city property is owned by the people, so to me,
This is
it needs
strictly
to be-
just about the fencing and the landscaping. That's the only reason there is an outside agreement.
Alderman Street, or, I'm sorry, Board of Commissioner Street. This agreement, even though it's marked confidential at the top, it will be part of our public records. It's not recorded at the registrar's office because it's not a land transfer document, but it will be recorded, we'll have it in our public records. So if someone asks for it with a FOIA request, I think we'd be bound to turn it over. So we can't make the agreement confidential. They can mark it confidential, but it doesn't mean it's confidential once it's here. In fact, it's in our packet, so it's already not confidential.
Right, but I mean, just because of history and stuff, I mean, if it's not listed with the Register of Deeds, then the easement doesn't exist.
No, the easement document itself, so there's a couple things. The easement document itself, that's the one that's marked easement, that's recorded with the Register of Deeds office. It has to be. Otherwise, it's not a valid property transfer.
Right.
The contract, the letter agreement, which I'm going to suggest some amendments to it to address some of these concerns, but this is not recorded, and you couldn't record that in the registrar's office. It wouldn't be proper because it's not a property document, but it'd be filed here in City Hall. I was going to call it courthouse. I've been in court all day. It'd be here in City Hall. And so if a citizen wanted to see it, they'd be entitled to see it. So I know that you're talking about transparency. It would be totally transparent. They've marked it confidential at the top, but it's not
Right.
confidential because it's already been in our packet, which has been disseminated on the internet. So there's really nothing confidential about it.
Okay.
I think that's what you were asking.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that if there's ever a question arose, people can get to this actual,
They can.
Document.
Because the easement
And it's
will be on
public.
public, and this document will be on file here at City Hall.
okay.
The Alderman, or Commissioners, God, I keep doing that. On the attachment to this letter agreement, if you go to the second page, it says Activities and Conditions Addendum. I think if you're inclined to make a motion to approve this at some point tonight, you could say that one should be a natural poly faux wood fence. You would substitute that language for green slated chain link fence, right, as number one. And then number three, you could add a number three and say, maintain property and fence at least on a quarterly basis, which addresses Commissioner Hall's issue. So I think those would be the two changes that you can make very easily with a condition of approval. And then Commissioner Johnson, if you wanted to change the amount, for example, I think their total is $4,260. So for example, if you want to change that to $10,000 for total compensation, which would be the cost of the acquisition of the easement plus additional funds for landscaping, you could change that as a condition of approval. I'm not suggesting $10,000. I'm just by using that as an example, Commissioner.
I would also like to add on there, though, that if we're going to maintain around it, then we need to be reimbursed for maintaining it, because we do have to pay people to maintain that. So that should be something to consider, is that we need to be reimbursed for what we pay to keep up with that.
Tom, do you have written down what he just said?
I
My-
wrote it down.
You wrote it down too? Well, my motion a minute ago didn't get a second, so I'm just going to remake my motion to what Patrick just said, minus the $10,000 aspect. I'm going to go ahead and, I guess, add in the reimbursement. Tom, are you comfortable with the city employees putting this landscaping in? Otherwise, we're gonna be in the same situation they are, and we're gonna have to bid it out, and so, I mean, that's just putting more work on the city, so. And I'm not recommending
know
we
that
do
we
that.
have
I'm asking if
landscapers.
we even have the ability to do
I
that.
don't know that we have landscapers on staff.
But we could do it. I don't know what the city wants. I mean, I've seen a lot of them, the fences with no landscaping around them before.
Yes.
I know there's a tree, I think there's trees behind it, which kind of gives a background to it. But whatever the board wants to do, I believe, we could get it done.
Well, like I said, if this was back a house, it's one issue, but right on our main highway, so visible, in my opinion, this needs to look nice. I don't want it to,
If I could make a suggestion, instead of focusing on what the actual cost of the landscaping is or who's going to do it, I would just, if you were inclined to make a motion to approve it, I would just change the amount of the consideration to an amount that you're satisfied with, and if the city chooses to landscape it or add landscape, then they would have funds to do so. You know, rather than, I mean, none of us can know what that's going to cost, and so just make that amount enough for the acquisition and what the landscape would cost.
For you to lay this out like you just did, which kind of gives you a visual of the 30 by 30, I'm prepared to double that to 5,000 for landscaping allowance.
Well, what I heard the mayor say earlier is 8,000 for a little bitty section in front of her house. And her house, I don't know how big an area you've got, I mean, but how big was the area?
it was about one side of what this rectangle would be. Or it's actually a square. It's pretty much a square what we're looking at. We're looking at a 30-foot by 30-foot by 33.707 and 30.16. So basically, it's a 30-foot by 30-foot square is what they're looking at. And just if you can visualize this, where this is located, right now, if you go down 96 and you turn left on Northwest Highway, that's the parking area for Whiskey Fire. So that whole area right there is what we're looking at.
Well, again, most entrances, even like state parks, they're usually like the cedar trees and something that's seasonal that won't, for the most part, freeze. It's more commercial type landscaping than what I would think, do around the house. But again, that's everyone's prerogative that wants to make those decisions.
Yeah, I'm not doing anything fancy because I don't like to maintain things. So basically, it's boxwoods.
Yes.
So, but,
Yes, ma'am. And another cost, the factor is the age of the shrub or the tree that you put in. So the cost does fluctuate. It just depends on how large you want it. When it's on its
mine are
onset.
babies because I don't.
It's a big.
I know,
they're much
I
better.
just,
Yeah, I do a
I'm
little bit
just
in my house
comparing
myself,
just
but,
because, just trying to show how big the area is and,
Yeah,
anyway, so.
and so,
I think the landscape thing can be worked out. My main thing, and I'm hearing our city attorney possibly just leaning towards the selling of the easement. I think the easement doesn't go, you're wanting to use it for a year at that price. I think year 2, there's another price. In year 3, and year 4, and year 5. And I'm not saying that we necessarily need to increase that, but we know property values are not gonna get smaller than where they are here in Williamson County. So, if you're wanting to give us 1760 and y'all have done the math based on what he says and what it came out to, then that's fine, but I think that's 1760 a year.
Well, to my knowledge, Piedmont does not do an annual payout. Their easement is a sum total at the time it's,
So we need to make that covered, we need to make that 176,000. Just a one-time thing, and then that way it complies with how we do business.
Forgive me, and that's the total value of the whole property? Is that what's the 176?
388,000 for it, but she said Piedmont doesn't do this yearly, so we want to just collect 50 years up front.
50 years?
Maybe, I mean,
Yeah.
whatever, we could probably do that.
Yeah, but if you look, that payment, that upfront payment is the value of that property. It does not necessarily, that's put out to the property present value now. If we pay that every year, that would be far overpaying for that property and the value even that is determined in that 50 years, probably.
Then why seek an easement? Why not just buy property? Then you own it.
we don't.
You're wanting to use our property, that's the thing.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
So if it's cheaper for Piedmont to do business just buying a piece of property, why are you here seeking an easement?
Because,
We don't make acquisitions on our easement.
yeah, we don't make acquisitions of the full property, but
But we
that,
don't do easements we don't sell easements for just 1 year.
what is y'all's typical, like, policy or example that y'all do? I'm just,
not sure, since
cur-
this is a new board, I'm proposing that we get a yearly fee of what you're saying, $1,760.
that would be over, in my personal opinion, that would be more than the property is worth, and we have a responsibility to our shareholders, our customers, and everyone else not to overpay. It would just be like a standard easement that, if we took that piece and that's all we're using, we're not using the other property. I totally understand your point, totally see it, sir, but we would be well overpaying at that point for that. And
If we let that go, could we reach an agreement that whatever the gas prices are currently on these customers that are gonna be hooked to this, that you will not increase them over the next 20 years?
no, sir, we can't do
We
that
don't
either.
have any
They're
control over
based
that.
upon the
Yeah.
Tennessee Public Utilities again.
Yeah, they're the governing body, not us.
So we're the governing body on the easement.
Yes, sir.
So I'm gonna make a motion that it's $1,760. I'm also going to include the natural poly fence, 8 foot tall, in the color that y'all discussed. Was it a taupish color, Mayor? Is that what y'all said? We'll just say faux wood. Faux wood? Faux wood? And a landscaping allowance of $15,000. That is the motion.
A second.
Well, I would also add 3, maintain property and fence on at least a quarterly basis.
Maintain your fencing in a quarterly basis. Otherwise, the
That's a
recourse.
natural poly
What?
faux wood fence, 8 foot.
No, we have to do.
We have to do the
Fence on at least a
landscaping.
quarterly basis.
It's on our,
We're gonna be responsible.
We'll be responsible for that.
And that's what I want, the $1,700 a year to take care of the landscape.
You want to defer? Is that what you're asking for?
We cannot do a year-to-year on that.
Yeah,
We don't do that on any easement.
Yeah,
We purchase an easement and that's it.
Commissioners, I'm hearing they want to defer. Do you want to defer indefinitely? Is that what you're asking for? So you can go back to your people and
No, I'm saying if your board is going to pass that we must pay you on an annual basis, we have to decline that. Our laws, we can't do that. We're prepared to,
so are you going to
Yep.
withdraw the request? Otherwise, they're going to act. So you should either defer or withdraw your request, because otherwise you're going to be,
is the board requesting that?
yeah, they just made a motion in a second.
Okay, I didn't hear the second. I'm
So
sorry.
it's going to be a $15,000 landscape fee, $1,760 a year for the easement. And then your activities and conditions addendum will be a natural poly faux wood 8-foot fence, and 3, maintain property and fence on at least a quarterly basis. So there's been a motion and a second for that. So if you're saying that that's not acceptable to you,
Right.
then it would be
Defer.
very advisable to ask for a deferral or withdraw your request.
We'll ask for a deferral.
We have to ask for
Yeah,
deferral. Yes, sir.
we're not,
Or I can change the motion to, like I said a moment ago, and we can do a one-time fee. Just say, we'll just sell it to you for 50 years.
You could do that.
well, it's perpetual. The easement's perpetual. You can't put a time frame on it.
Well, actually, we can because we own the property.
But once it goes
That
there,
doesn't mean
and-
y'all will agree to it, but yes, we can. We can say that we'll allow you to use the city property for 50 years for $88,000, which is $1,760 a year times 50.
Yeah, in that case too, sir, we would have to defer on that one if we change it around, because there's all kinds of state and federal, I don't want, not federal, but internal stuff and legal that we would have to check on that. There's no way we could agree to that right now. We would have to defer until the next one. But if the original one still stands with the 3, the fence, the landscape charge, and what was the other one? The $1,760 a year, we would still have to defer on that one too. Because one,
You're asking for everything to be deferred.
yes, sir, is that how you see it, Wanda?
Will y'all bring legal counsel when you seek to be on the agenda again the next time? Somebody
That
that we can
typical,
work with
Wanda?
on the contract?
I've never had that request, but I can ask them. Our legal counsel's in North Carolina. So our easements are pretty much standard. Certainly, there's some negotiation with separate agreements, but, you know, they hand down to us what we can do, and that's the way it is.
But
Unless
you
they
are
tell us
making-
otherwise.
You're making a statement that Piedmont does not own any property where they put these stations.
No, I said that we're not prepared to purchase the property on 96.
Oh, okay. I think that's a little different than what you said a moment ago, but.
Then I withdraw what I said a moment ago. I'm not familiar, since I've been with them, of them acquiring any property for the land for a reg station. I'm not familiar. Now, if it was before my time, they may have, but I'm not familiar with it. And we have had others to ask about that, and they've always been declined, to my knowledge, since I've been there.
The contractor? I guess that is, assuming there's not another meeting or a public meeting that is available for us to go back and see that, I mean, we have no choice but to delay. I mean, if that's the case, unless there is another board meeting in between the expected start date, which I'm not sure, I don't have that in front of me what that was.
Do you think we can?
Meeting would be July the 6th.
Do you think that there is any movement on your annual request payment? Other than putting a 50-year
I think it
term
would
on
be, I thank you for your question, I don't mean to cut you off, but I think it would be wise to strike your motion, strike the second, and move to defer it indefinitely, and allow their people to reach out to city staff, who then can communicate with you individually to see if a deal can be struck. But I don't think they're prepared to do the type of deal that the city's really looking for, or in the amount the city's looking for, because they don't have the authority, and they are correct insofar as they're subject to Tennessee law, and there's very complicated laws governing utilities, and so they're limited in what they can do. And so I think it would be best, instead of passing something that they can't do, that may have to go back and change in the future, which would be complicated, is to strike the motion and just defer it indefinitely and allow them to come back. They can communicate what the city's looking for to their people, and if they're still interested in acquiring the easement, they can make a better offer along the lines of hopefully what, what the city's looking for. I think that would be the far better way to handle it.
And y'all are in agreement with that?
Are you saying to present that to the mayor or to the manager, or how do you want us to?
City administrator is he's the quote-unquote CEO of the city, and so then he can have the appropriate staff look at it.
Okay.
And then he can communicate with the commissioners one-on-one. Or we can have a work session where it can be discussed, and then we can vote on it in a future meeting, would be probably the far better way than try to work out a deal when you're not sure what you can do, and you have 5 people that you have to convince one way or another. So, but if you force them to act and they pass something that you can't do anyway, then it makes it much harder to continue to try to negotiate in the future. So, both for the city and for Piedmont.
Correct.
So, if a
With
deal
that,
can't
with
be
that
done
being
tonight.
said, and Piedmont asking for the deferral, I'm going to remove my motion, strike my motion, and remove my second on the original motion to start discussion, and ask that this be deferred to a future agenda when they get with our city manager and
I would just say
feel comfortable
indefinitely,
bringing it.
and that way they can come back in a month or in 6 months.
Okay, indefinitely.
Do you need to, what was the lump sum amount you suggested earlier?
88,000.
88,000? So y'all know what we're looking at to be able to work with that and see what we can get close to.
Is there a neighboring municipality that you've done a station about this size that I can go look at recently?
I think the closest one is in Brentwood, right off of 65 and Franklin Road, next to the church there. If you come off of 65, going west or toward Brentwood, and take Franklin Road, it's probably about a mile, and it's so right on the right at a church there. It's about a 30 by 30, maybe
There's a
little
lot
bit.
of churches.
You-
There are a
well,
lot of churches on Franklin
You'll
Road.
see it on your right-hand
Okay,
side.
you
You'll
know
see
where
the
the
fencing around
Kroger
you.
and that whole Chick-fil-A shopping center is on the left?
Oh, yes, you cross over 65.
Okay,
Going
so-
west, and then you take a right going north on Franklin Road, and about 2 miles up on the right, it's right next to I think it's a red brick church on the right-hand side.
Before
You'll
you
see.
get to Hogan Road,
Pardon?
before you get to Hogan Road, which is close.
Oh, yes.
Is there an
right
address?
before you get to
Do
Hogan.
we
Right up
have
against
an
the-
address at all?
Ma'am?
Do we have an address or?
Not off my head right now.
Yeah, we can get that to you. Yeah,
Yeah.
it runs, it's right up against the interstate.
Was that through the city
65.
of Franklin?
Sir?
Was that through the city of Franklin or
No,
Brentwood?
sir.
It's Brentwood.
Yes.
So if Mr. Doherty contacts the city manager in Brentwood, he should be able to readily identify that.
Yes, I
Possibly,
would say
yeah.
so, yes.
Yeah.
I
Location and
I can call
the
Kirk.
term.
I have Kirk's phone number.
Perfect.
I'll call, he's the city manager. I'll call him and ask him where it is because I'd really like to go look at it
Okay, sure.
while we're,
And
Yes,
they've
ma'am.
got the landscaping
this.
in too as well. The church did it after we finished, so you can see what they did.
Okay.
If you'd like.
And technically, it is Oak Hill, city of Oak Hill, and.
That's true.
Yes. And the commissioner, oh my gosh, I just forgot his title, excuse me. The city manager there is Stuart Coley.
okay, so that's not Brentwood then? Because Kirk
It
Bednar
looks-
is the city manager
So
of
you-
Brentwood.
Yes, ma'am. So
what's
technically,
his
it's
name?
in the Oak Hill territory, just like they got Forest Hills over there, Oak Hill.
Tell-
It's kinda like
tell
the
me
city
his name
within.
again.
But it's actually Davidson County, I believe. It doesn't switch over until that. Stuart Coley?
So it's going north towards Franklin Road Academy? Okay.
Away from it. Yes, sir, it's away from it. It's actually closer to Old Hickory Boulevard, just like
But if
previous
you're
commissioner.
If you get off the interstate at Old Hickory Boulevard, you have to go towards Nashville to get to your site.
Correct.
Yeah.
On Franklin
Oh,
Road.
so you're not towards Brentwood, you're towards Nashville.
It's on the,
Correct.
I got
it's on
you
the
now.
other Old Hickory
Yeah.
Boulevard side. Yes.
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, Yeah, well, I mean, I know where Hogan Road and Franklin Road are, so it's near
It's
that?
very close
Okay.
right now.
I just want to go look at it while we're in the
Sure.
midst of all this, so.
Point of order, we have a first by Commissioner Johnson to defer indefinitely, but I haven't heard a second yet.
A second.
Any other discussion?
I withdraw my original motion for discussion also.
We certainly would like to thank you for this special call because we wanted to try to stay with the schedule with our crew, but we do thank you for the willingness.
Commissioner Street?
Are we voting?
Yes.
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson? Aye. Commissioner Hall?
Aye.
Mayor Anderson? Aye. Motion for deferral indefinitely until we get things situated passes 4-0.
Move to adjourn.
So moved.
Yeah.
You all again for a Friday
Yeah.
Friday afternoon. Thank you for that.